Hi, I'm Miriam, and I'm here today to introduce you to my new book, The Rosewood Guitar, which releases tomorrow, on Tuesday, the 24th, February 24th. So, to celebrate the release of this last book in the Stone series, I mean, you've heard of the Stone series, of course. You've read the Stone trilogy, which is The Distant Shore, Under the Same Sun, and Song of the Storm, and you read the prequel, Waiting for a Song, Naomi's story. So now we have John's story, The Rosewood Guitar, and it will take you from snowy Brooklyn, New York, to the sunny beaches of Los Angeles. And I'd like to read the first chapter to you now. And then, if there's some time left over, I'd like to talk a bit about being published, getting published, finding a publisher, writing, and all that technical kind of stuff. But now, Rosewood Guitar, Chapter 1. The words wouldn't come. John sat staring at the blank sheet of paper on the desk as if he could make them appear magically. Each time he put the pencil to the paper, his mind went empty, as if the words, seeing him start to write, would scamper away. He imagined them just outside the window screen, dancing in tune with the raindrops pelting against it, mocking him, mocking his attempt to capture them. His section of the store was nearly empty. There was one woman standing next to the table of used poetry books, a battered edition of the complete works of Edgar Allan Poe in her gloved hand. Her coat exuded the musty smell of wet wool. Her boots left dirty puddles that carefully avoided the bag standing beside her on the old hardwood floor. From where John sat, he could see Steve guiding another customer toward the cookbook section. Jenny, a pen between her fingers, was watching the traffic jam outside from her position behind the counter. The lamp above her threw golden highlights on her strawberry blonde hair, and that made John smile. She was like a bright yellow flower in the dark melancholy of a November afternoon. His eyes drifted back to the empty piece of paper. The river, he wrote at the top. He wrote it carefully, in slow, neat letters, in his best handwriting, the beautiful, old-fashioned copperplate his father had taught him. The melody was right there. He'd been humming it on his way to work, first while walking to the subway station, and then on the train while he watched the lights in the tunnel flit by, and then again on his short walk from the Union Square stop to the bookstore. 2 blocks in the bitter November rain, his collar turned up, and his hand deep in the pockets of his coat, he walked quickly, the wordless song running through his brain. Coffee. Coffee. Mr. Brown had glanced up and given him a sharp look when he walked in, mumbling that he was late again and to please take an earlier train next time, but John had ignored him. Falling asleep last night, on that threshold between being awake and drifting off into dreams, he'd found the perfect words. He remembered feeling elated, knowing they were perfect, and he tried to get up and write them down. But even while he was thinking that, he'd fallen asleep. In the morning they'd been gone, no more than a memory, like an echo in a hallway. Shaving, he'd racked his brain, trying to catch them, but all he could recall was the word along, because it rhymed so nicely with song. The rest was gone. Now, sitting at his help desk in the store, watching the woman with the Poe book, he wondered if he'd ever make it, if he'd ever be a good enough songwriter for the big stage, when he couldn't even remember his own lyrics. Jenny was looking his way. She'd put down the pencil and was gesturing at him furtively, rolling her eyes. He knew what that meant. Quickly he pushed the sheet under a couple of store flyers and sat up straight. "Well, John," Mr. Brown said from behind him, "don't you think you should go over and ask the lady if she needs help?" I've been watching her, John replied. She's been holding that book for 10 minutes. Maybe she just wants to find a passage or something. Bending down so he could whisper, Mr. Brown offered, "And since when are we a library, Mr. Stone? If she wants to read that book, she should buy it, shouldn't she?" John rose from his seat. "Yes, sir." "You were daydreaming again, I'm guessing?" John felt the prickle of sweat on his back. "Not really, sir, but it's a very quiet day." Mr. Brown turned to look toward the windows and the shop entrance. "Yes, that's true. A miserable, dreary day. Nobody wants to be outside, not even in New York." He raised his finger with a glare at John. "But mark my words, John, it's only a week until Thanksgiving. Even if today is slow, things will change soon. The holiday season is almost here." "Yes, sir," John repeated. He could see it already. Shoppers laden with bags and parcels pushing through the narrow aisles of the store, upsetting Mr. Brown's careful piles of books, and he would have to clamber after them to pick up the fallen copies, climb up ladders to fetch desired titles, and carry baskets back to the counter, smiling all the way. "I need to leave a little early tonight," he said to Mr. Brown. "I have an appointment." "And what might that be, young Mr. Stone?" Mr. Brown straightened the red bow tie he was wearing. It clashed with the greenish tweed jacket. But over the past few months, John had discovered that his boss had a set schedule for his bow ties, and this week it was red. While John was still wondering if it was because Christmas was approaching, Mr. Brown asked, "Has it anything to do with that guitar lying on top of your locker?" John's blood rushed straight to his ears. "Yes, sir." He didn't know how to say it. "I'm playing tonight. I have a gig." Spoken out loud, it sounded preposterous. "A gig?" Mr. Brown's brows vanished under the unruly hair hanging down over his forehead. "You mean you're giving a concert?" John pulled up his shoulders. "Not quite, Mr. Brown. It's just me and my guitar and a few of my songs. Concert sounds a bit grand." "Well." The woman with the poe book was coming toward them, leaving a trail of heart-shaped footprints. "Excuse me," she said. "I wonder if there's an illustrated complete poe edition?" Mr. Brown gestured to John, and John sighed. "Follow me, please," he said. "Take me down to the river. Let me listen to its song. Can you hear the river's heartbeat? It's the place where I belong." "And the other one right next to it?" The woman pointed, and John reached up to get the book she meant. Once in hand, he realized it was a beautiful edition, the violet linen cover a bit faded, but the gold lettering still intact. "I don't think it has illustrations." He handed it to her and climbed down the ladder. They were in one of the musty aisles between high bookshelves, barely wide enough to hold two people. "The writing on the cover is nice." John pointed at the golden letters. "Art Deco, very pretty." Again the words ran through his head, making him forget his customer for a moment. He could almost hear the drums, heavy, insistent, like a beating heart. "And that Julia Child cookbook?" Perplexed, John looked at her. "Do you know a word that rhymes with heartbeat?" The woman blinked. "Neat? Fleet?" She tilted her head, intrigued. "Greet or meet? Feet?" "Feet," John repeated slowly. "Yes, feet. Thank you." "Are you a poet, then? Seems fitting since you work in the poetry department." She clamped the book under her arm and followed when he pointed toward the cookbook section. "Suzanne will help you with the Julia Child. She knows everything about cookbooks." Mr. Brown was nowhere in sight, so John returned to his desk and pulled up the sheet of paper again to write down the words that had popped into his mind. "Feet," he mumbled to himself. "Meet my feet, meet and greet my feet." Again the rhyme eluded him, despite the help he'd gotten. He could see the image he wanted to paint, could almost hear the song dancing around him, and then it was gone again, like a wisp of fog. All my life I have been waiting for this moment to appear. River's heartbeat, river calling, that is all I came to hear. There it was, and with it the insistent tap of the snare, a slap bass, and the bass drum like the pulse of the song. John's hand trembled a bit as he wrote down the first verse, then the second, and then the chorus. Humming it under his breath, he felt for flaws in the rhythm, but there weren't really any bad kinks, nothing he couldn't be able to cheat away when he sang it. The River. John tasted the title on his lips. It pleased him, made him smile, and it made him want to perform it. He glanced at his watch. It was nearly 7, almost time to leave. He'd have to walk all the way to Bleecker Street. It wasn't that far, no worse than the stretch he walked every day from home to the subway station, but it was still drizzling, and he was worried about his guitar. With one last look in Jenny's direction, he got up and made his way to the locker room. His old battered leather jacket hung there near a heater where he had put it to dry when he came in. The guitar case was on top of his locker. John brought it down and opened it. The instrument inside was simple, a well-used, basic pinewood guitar. Its surface black lacquer, its belt a colorful band that his parents had brought him back from a vacation in Mexico. It was quite frayed, and he had asked his mother a number of times to stitch it back together. She had done it, complaining about the chore, but John refused to replace it. It was his good luck charm, and he wanted to feel it on his shoulder when he played, as if it was his mother's hand, his father's smile of approval, something that would keep him grounded, feeling loved. His mother, Helen, had promised to come to his gig tonight, even though she hated clubs and their strict drinking rules. She could never, she kept telling him, deal with 2 drinks, and she hated the waste of having to pay for them and actually not drink them. John had offered to pay for her, but she had scoffed at him, saying he could hardly afford the subway, and where, please, was he going to come up with the money for 2 cocktails? And as she said it, she had fished a $50 bill out of her wallet and pressed it into his hand. You need to go back and finish college, John, she had told him. Go get your degree and a good job. You know you could have a decent place by now and be making a good income. You are wasting your life away working part-time at that bookstore and trying to become a star. I don't want to be a star, Mother, he replied, the money burning in his palm. All I want is to perform my music and earn enough to make a living. I don't need the Hollywood or fame. It was a lie, and she knew it. Okay, so that's the first chapter, or part of the first chapter of Rosewood, and I hope you enjoyed it, and enjoyed it enough to go out and actually buy the book. And if you're enjoying that book, so maybe you'll go and even enjoy the others, who knows. And that's it for today, because I just see my time is up. I'll have to post this to YouTube, so I can't extend the time anymore, and I wish you a very nice day. Bye bye.